Hello everyone, and welcome back to Marvelous Video. Today, we're cracking open one of the most infamous fan theories in cartoon history, the SpongeBob nuclear testing theory. You've probably heard whispers about it before. The idea that SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, and the entire Bikini Bottom gang aren't just wacky sea creatures, but mutated results of Cold War-era nuclear experiments. Yeah, it sounds crazy, doesn't it? Well, once you start connecting the dots behind government testing, the real-life Bikini Atoll, and the sheer insanity of SpongeBob's world, things start to get a little too suspicious. Before we dive deep into the theory, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and like the video. Now, are you ready, kids? Let's get started.
No.
Yes.
The nuclear connection. So let's start with a little history lesson. The name bikini isn't just a cute reference to swimwear. It actually comes from Bikini Atoll, which is later known as Bikini Atoll. Bikini Atoll was a chain of islands in the Marshall Islands. This place, located smack dab in the Pacific Ocean, was under U.S. control after World War II. Now, what did the U.S. do with this tropical paradise? Oh, just use it as a giant science experiment for nuclear bombs. Totally normal. Between 1946 and 1958, the U.S. government detonated 67 nuclear weapons in the region, including one blast in 1954, codenamed Bravo, that was 1,000 times stronger than the Hiroshima bomb. Talk about overkill. The locals were forced to relocate, and unfortunately, their new home wasn't exactly stocked. It basically led to food shortages and starvation. Now, here's where SpongeBob comes in. A theory born from the deep and mysterious lands of Reddit suggests that Bikini Bottom exists directly under Bikini Atoll. The idea was that all that nuclear testing didn't just mess with the environment, it mutated the local sea life. Now we've got a sponge that flips burgers, a crab who hoards money, and a plankton running a fast food joint like a wannabe Bond villain. It even makes sense when you think about it. Some of those nuclear bombs were detonated underwater, meaning the radiation could have seeped into the ocean and turned regular sea critters into, well, whatever the heck Squidward is. A mutant? A cursed soul? A guy who just really hates his job? Of course, SpongeBob isn't exactly known for its realism. I mean, one minute the fire burns underwater, and the next, jellyfish act like electric puppies. But hey, it could be possible. Visual references. Alright, let's talk about something mind-blowing, literally. Have you ever noticed how every big explosion in SpongeBob SquarePants looks kinda similar? Those massive mushroom-shaped bursts of fire and smoke? Well, it could be a direct reference to actual nuclear tests conducted at Bikini Atoll. So apparently, one of the actual nuclear bombs tested in Bikini Atoll was detonated underwater. Sounds familiar? Every time the show features an explosion with that distinctive shape, fans believe it could be a subtle nod or a dark joke about its real-life origins. It gets weirder though. In one episode, there's an explosion that perfectly resembles a mushroom cloud, just like the Crossroads Baker test in 1946. For those who aren't nuclear history buffs, which, let's be honest, is most of us, Operation Crossroads was a series of nuclear tests in July 1946, and the Baker test was particularly infamous. It was the first ever instance of concentrated radioactive fallout, contaminating an entire fleet of target ships. In fact, chemist Glenn T. Seaborg, who basically ran the Atomic Energy Commission for ages, straight up called it the world's first nuclear disaster. Character implication. So far, if we're following the logic of the theory, SpongeBob and his friends might not just be quirky sea creatures, but mutated survivors of nuclear experimentation. I mean, let's look at the facts. SpongeBob is an extremely absorbent sea sponge with, well, human-like intelligence. Mr. Krabs is a money-obsessed crab raising a whale as his daughter. Plankton is a microscopic organism, but somehow he has a full-blown evil lair and marriage problems. Oh, and the most interesting of them all, Sandy Cheeks. Now you all know Sandy Cheeks is the karate chopping, acorn hoarding, science-loving squirrel, right? Well, according to one deep dive Reddit theory, Sandy might not have been there by accident. In fact, her entire existence could be a direct reference to the nuclear tests at Bikini Atoll. And the evidence? Oh, it's nuts. Turns out, back when the US Navy was testing nuclear bombs in the Pacific, they didn't just use ships and dummies to study the effects. They also brought along animals, including chipmunks and squirrels. The idea was to test how radiation affected different species. So, some of these unlucky little critters were placed on ships during the tests at Bikini Atoll, where they were exposed to nuclear blasts and fallout. So, according to this theory, Sandy Cheeks might actually be one of those animals. Except, instead of just glowing in the dark or growing an extra tail, she absorbed enough radiation to mutate into an intelligent, sentient super squirrel. Think about it. She wears a full protective suit at all times. She's ridiculously strong, especially during hibernation, where she becomes an unstoppable force of destruction. Maybe that's not just cartoon logic, but a side effect of radiation mutation. Her name is Sandy, which could be a reference to the huge amounts of sand blasted into the air during nuclear explosions. She's on a research grant and was literally sent to Bikini Bottom by a team of monkeys. What if she's not just a quirky scientist, but an actual surveyor studying the long-term effects of nuclear radiation on marine life? Environmental details. According to this theory, rock bottom isn't just a part of the ocean, but rather, it might actually be a nuclear impact crater. Honestly, that would explain a lot. Back in the 1940s, when the US was prepping Bikini Atoll for nuclear bomb testing, they didn't just drop the bombs and call it a day. Oh no, they literally used explosives to carve channels into the coral reef so their big, important Navy ships could move through. Then came the actual nukes, which blew massive holes in the ocean floor, some so deep that they were never fully refilled. Well, if Bikini Bottom is located under Bikini Atoll, then Rock Bottom, which is a much lower, darker, weirder place, could easily be the remains of one of these nuclear craters. Also, have you ever noticed how the setting of Rock Bottom seems oddly outdated? The buildings, the old school technology, the fact that letters are used instead of emails. It's almost like stepping into a time capsule from the 1940s, right? Well, according to this theory, that's because it is a time capsule. Rock Bottom could be a part of Bikini Atoll that got blasted into nuclear oblivion and then left behind, preserving remnants of a society frozen in time. Even the locals seem way more mutated than the folks in Bikini Bottom. One Reddit user has also pointed out that the prices at the Krusty Krab seem way cheaper than today's fast food prices. If Rock Bottom is a nuclear wasteland stuck in time, then it makes perfect sense that their economy is still running on 1940s pricing. Meanwhile, in the real world, we're out here paying $15 for a burger and fries. Who's the real winner here? Recent confirmation. Back in 2015, Tom Kenny, the voice behind SpongeBob himself, was asked about this popular theory. His response, though, was a hard pass. He acknowledged that Bikini Bottom is named after Bikini Atoll, where the nuclear tests happened, but he didn't think the characters were radioactive mutants. In his own words, he said, nah, that one. I don't think SpongeBob and his friends are mutations. Roger Bumpus, aka the voice of everyone's favorite grumpy squid or octopus, depending on who you ask, also dismissed the theory. According to them, Bikini Bottom is just a fun, wacky underwater world, not a post-apocalyptic science experiment. Then, out of nowhere, came Mr. Lawrence, who voiced Plankton and was also a writer for the show. In an interview with Esquire, he confirmed that Bikini Bottom was a nuclear test site, and that's exactly why the sea creatures talk, act like humans, and run fast food joints, instead of just, well, being regular fishes. According to Mr. Lawrence, it's not just that Bikini Bottom was affected by nuclear testing. He said the entire human world is gone. That's right. He claimed that the world upstairs is gone, and all that's left is the bizarre, talking sea creature society living under the ocean. While that explanation is undeniably epic, it doesn't exactly hold up. If the human world was completely destroyed, how would we explain the times we saw humans in the show? For example, remember the classic Frankendoodle episode in season 2? A human artist is literally sitting in a rowboat, sketching away, when his pencil falls into the ocean, setting off an entire episode of doodle chaos. There's also the Patchy the Pirate, who is played by Tom Kenny himself, who shows up repeatedly throughout the series. If humans were truly gone, how are these guys still hanging around? Scientific reality. Alright, let's take a break from talking about SpongeBob's bizarre, radiation-fueled antics and dive into the real-life horror story behind Bikini Atoll. When the US dropped those massive nuclear bombs in the 1940s and 50s, the explosions weren't just catastrophic for the environment, they completely destroyed the lives of the island's original inhabitants. The people of Bikini Atoll were forced to leave their homes, and the worst part was they could never go back. Not in their lifetime, not in their children's lifetime, not even in their great-great-grandchildren's lifetime. The radiation contamination is so severe that the land won't be safe for thousands of years. In the 1970s, the US government tried to fix its mistake. Nearly 200 Bikinians were allowed to return to their islands, but in 1978, they were once again forced to leave because scientists found they were absorbing insane amounts of radioactive cesium from the environment. In fact, they had more radioactive material in their bodies than any other known human population. So, back into exile, they went. Today, their descendants live scattered across other islands, and even in the US, permanently cut off from their homeland. Remember when SpongeBob writer Mr. Lawrence said that the theory is sort of true, and the world upstairs is gone? Well, maybe he wasn't talking about the entire planet. Instead, he could have been referencing the real-life Bikini Atoll, the place that, for the Bikinian, is effectively dead. No people, no thriving human culture, just a ghost of what once was. Despite the nightmare-level radiation, a study conducted by Steve Palumbi in 2017 found that marine life in the nuclear crater is thriving. How is that possible? Well, one theory is that because the original ecosystem was completely wiped out, new sea creatures moved in and started repopulating the area. Basically, nature hit the reset button. Before we get too excited, scientists have also found some suspicious things, like nurse sharks with only one dorsal fin instead of two. I mean, that could be natural, but let's be real, it probably isn't. It's not just sharks either. A recent study led by scientist Siler Conrad discovered that nuclear contamination can still be found in the shells of sea turtles that live near the Marshall Islands. Since turtles grow layers of keratin on their shells, kind of like how we grow fingernails, scientists can literally track the nuclear history of an area through their bodies. Marvelous verdict. After diving deep into the history of Bikini Atoll, nuclear tests, and talking sea creatures, one thing is clear. The SpongeBob nuclear testing theory is both dark and fascinating. It explains why sea creatures can talk, why they go to work, and how they manage to do everything humans do. Plus, it clears up the age-old mystery of why fire can exist underwater. Nuclear tests, baby. At the end of the day, SpongeBob SquarePants isn't a show meant to be taken seriously. It's just pure absurd fun. That doesn't mean we can't ask big questions and explore wild theories, though. After all, part of what makes the show so great is how mysterious and random it is. One thing that I know for sure is that I will never look at those mushroom-shaped explosions the same way ever again. Anyway, let's hear it from you now. Do you think the Bikini Bottom nuclear test theory is true? What other weird theories have you heard before? Let me know in the comments below, and maybe we can cover them next. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.